Hello, everyone. This is Reverend Jerry Hobby with Spiritual Enlightenment and Truth Focused Ministry. And I want to let you know I'm just so happy to be with you today. We were planning to go Facebook Live with this special interview. I've been promising this to many of you because we're all going through quite a bit right now with the coronavirus, and many of us are in different states, different things are going on. But today I have a special treat for you. And that treat is we have a wonderful person, a doctor, who is also a practitioner with Centers for Spiritual Living. She is a practitioner, for those who don't know, is a person who has been trained in spiritual practice, the art of prayer. I like to call them prayerful warriors. I believe that each one of us is a practitioner at heart, but they have invested their time, their whole essence into this whole process. And what they're there to do is to be in sacred service. But this person's journey in healing is probably something that she came into the world with. And she is just continuing to express it. So now she's integrating, and she's integrating that whole process because she's also a doctor. And I'm going to say this, it is for this moment that she has been prepared. And when I say it is for this moment she's been prepared, is because she gets a chance to integrate her skill, her knowledge, all of this all together. I'm just thinking about Ernest Holmes and his wisdom when he says we all look forward to the day when our science, our philosophy, and religion all come together. And this is that moment right now. So I'm so glad that she's with us. And this is Dr. Liza Swedarsky. Why don't you say hi to everybody?
Thank you, Reverend Jerry. Hi, it's wonderful to be here. I'm honored to be your guest today and looking forward to this conversation.
Wow, we're glad that you're with us too. So just to give everybody an idea in terms of who we are working with, just want to just share a couple of things in her bio. First of all, Dr. Liza is currently a gynecologist, and she does minimally invasive surgeries as an associate gynecologist at Brigham and Women's Hospital, um, which is in Boston. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And she's chosen this profession. She could have a private practice, but she says that my heart is with the community. So we're bringing this person with this skill and her sensitivity. And I want to say that part because that's an important part to the subject matter that we are going to be addressing. She's taught in many different places. She writes for Huffington Post. So we are working with someone who knows her stuff, and she's going to help us understand what is going on. In addition to that, she is dedicated to spiritual practice. And you know, with Spiritual Enlightenment and Truth, our ministry is focused on spiritual practice. And we believe there is value in spiritual practice. So she often integrates this. She has a special group that meets on a regular basis. And Dr. Liza, I keep wanting to call you Reverend. I don't know if that's something that's unfolding in your future. We shall see. But can you tell us about your weekly group that you facilitate?
Sure. So in my 2 decades of caring for women, I just asked the question, how can I serve? How can I be used? Because I felt that I had a second mission here. And I started Health Vows about 6 years ago. It's about vows to self for healthy living. And the groups that I meet with on a weekly basis. We go over mindfulness techniques. We talk about universal truths for self-empowerment, education, and self-advocacy. So these are the three areas that I feel are really important. I've taken all of the content from themes, common themes I see that women have shared throughout my career that I've personally experienced, and integrated into 7 different workshops, which are centered around each health vow. And so we meet, we have a set workshop curriculum. We talk about different techniques. We meditate together. We talk about fear and how to release fear, because I feel as a physician, this is really the quality that paralyzes people from pursuing optimal health. And it's a rich experience. There's a very intimate sharing, and we go over daily practices of gratitude. We talk about how to seek peace and happiness. We talk about love, and we also talk about medicine, how to be an active participant in the patient-doctor relationship, how to ask questions, how to not get distracted during your office visit. So you come with a intention and a purpose, and don't get distracted by your cell phone or the people in the waiting room or the office secretary. And wait times are very frustrating for people, but you're there for a purpose. And so if you walk in with that purpose in mind, ready to meet your physician and have that conversation, you won't get distracted. We also talk about choosing the right physician for you. That's a whole journey in itself. There's a fit in every aspect of our lives, and that's also a very important fit.
I so love what you're doing. And one of the things that I have learned over the course of the years, being a caregiver, first of all, many years ago, I've had the blessing over the course of the years to show up as an advocate for the elders in my family. And I believe that that experience taught me a whole lot, and it taught me a lot about myself. And what we're talking about is learning how to be a self-advocate for yourself.
Yes.
I think that's a very important thing right now, especially with everything that is going on. And I have some questions I want to get into, because we have a lot of controversy that is going on. There is a richness that is unfolding right now with this pandemic that is going on. And so I would like for us to have a conversation about spiritual practice. I want to destigmatize the word pandemic, because pandemic can support us in so many ways. There are some things that are pandemic that we really want to see expand itself. For example, kindness, compassion, those things there. We want to see that. And it is in moments like this, we get an opportunity to really witness that. And then there are things that we get to address, and we get to address it with wisdom and discernment. Yes. And with the skills of science, because I truly believe that God is in the science as well. And so what I'd like for us to start our conversation off with is just if you can explain this thing we call the coronavirus. Many people are in a lot of fear right now. And if you could just explain that, and what it is that we can do to empower ourselves right now.
So the first question, in terms of what is the coronavirus it's a virus. It's in the group of the SARS family of viruses that has been found in human beings as well as animals, cattle, cats, bats. And this particular virus, COVID-19, as we know as the coronavirus, has been found to have originated in Wuhan, China, and has now globally found its way across the entire world. And the first thing that you mentioned about demystifying the word pandemic, that's what that really means. When it has affected the world, it's found its place from one region and has infiltrated the world. I always look at this view as what is this trying to tell us is the world is a spiritual body, the planet, just as we are sentient beings, just as a tree, just as animals. And so this has emerged to tell us something. And I think the beautiful thing that you mentioned about Ernest Holmes is that quote that we shall all look forward to the day where religion and science walk hand in hand from the visible to the invisible. And just the other day, Anderson Cooper had an interview with Sanjay Gupta and Rick Warren, the pastor who wrote A Purpose-Driven Life. And that was just a beautiful thing to witness, talking about what is the coronavirus. So it's a new virus. That's why they call it the novel COVID-19 or coronavirus. So research is changing every day. We're learning new material day after day. And what has been found that it's spread via respiratory droplets primarily is what the research is showing currently. And it has about a 2 to 14 day incubation period. And it is basically transmitted, we believe, with coughing, people talking, and the theory is that the virus has difficulty traveling more than 6 to 7 feet. So that's why the social distancing is in effect, to try to decrease risk of transmission if someone is coughing or talking. We believe, so far from the research, that people are most infectious when they're most symptomatic, but there are asymptomatic carriers of this virus, which is why the mask policy has come in effect in most states, where you're now required to wear a mask, or asked to as a citizen, to self-empower and also to protect other individuals. Because if you actually happen to be a carrier of this virus, an asymptomatic carrier, by wearing the mask, you are shielding your mouth and your nose, wearing it properly, so that when you're coughing or talking, that you will not then spread the virus yourself when you're out grocery shopping, or if you have to drive into work, for those that are still going into the office, first responders, people working in grocery stores, the health industry, transportation. And so for self-empowerment, you have to look at the research, but also move your feet in terms of what can you do to help prevent spread. So wearing your mask, social distancing, social isolation. This is not the time for play dates or parties or getting together with friends or establishing new relationships. We are really all charged to now be home, stay home, sit still as this process of emergence takes place. What is coming through this entire experience for the entire planet, globally, and for humanity? There is a message here for all of us. And hand washing is also key. We say that if you can think of singing the ABC song very slowly, washing your hand for at least 20 to 30 seconds with soap and water. If you're using hand sanitizer, it should be at least 60% alcohol based. Those are the major things. The coronavirus is mostly going to be transmitted via the upper respiratory system, so inhaling when someone is coughing or talking, but it can also live on surfaces. And the data is changing on how long it lives on which surface. And there are myths out there as well, because we don't feel that it probably lives on some surfaces for too long. For instance, many things are made overseas, particularly in China. So can you get coronavirus, for instance, from a package coming on the UPS truck that's been in transit for many, many days? Probably a very low risk of that, but we're really not sure. So you have to take precautions. And for some people, people are wearing disposable gloves. Many individuals are coming in and removing their mask and their clothes and showering. So it's also what intuitively comes to you to do to protect yourself and your loved ones around you. Is that
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful introduction. And you hit some very important points. I love the fact that you've given us the basics. And part of what we get to learn as individuals, and I think sometimes we become so dependent on listening outwardly as opposed to bringing a balance to both listening, to know what we need to know, to get the information, and to discern, to listen within. I hear the word intuitively, listening intuitively. So if you feel so moved, and I just want to address that part, what I think I'm hearing is if you feel so moved, you have the basics, you have an understanding of what you need to do in terms of taking care of yourself, and knowing that you can be a carrier without knowing you are a carrier, to practice and to err on the side of caution. And so intuitively, when you come home, and if you feel that you should take your clothes off, your shoes off at the door, shower, and change into new clothes so that you can be a safe place. I'm hearing safe place for your loved ones, then do that. Listen intuitively. Sometimes we claim things are intuitive and we're responding out of a space of fear.
Yes.
And fear can magnify the situation as opposed to being proactive. And I hear that part of what we're here to do at this moment is to act proactively so that we can grow in our understanding, we can bring balance and harmony for our planet, for humanity, as we're moving and understanding um, this virus. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Fear is something that we can't just bypass. Fear is often there to teach us something about ourselves. It will cause us to take a pause. Physically, fear, scientifically, we know, produces effects in the body and in certain feelings that actually result in changes in your organ systems. So fear is something that we can't ignore. We must address it, face it, and walk through it, but not let it paralyze us from getting our good, as I tell my patients, because I work in the community health centers in Boston. And since 2006, I've worked in 7 of them. And the reason why it's been such a place in my heart to work is because I feel it's important to meet people where they are. Before I ever became a doctor, I was a young girl without health insurance for a very long time. And also watching family members. So fear has been part of the cloth in humanity, but it can cause us to have transformation in our lives if we approach it in a way with an open eye and an open heart to say, what is this fearful situation trying to show me or trying to teach me? And so this is where I feel that fear is important, but fear can also keep us from actually growing and changing and stepping out on faith. I think one of the best spiritual advice I ever received was at a silent retreat, and it was a 4-day retreat, and this gentleman told this beautiful story, and he said, to live a connected life, you need 3 things. You need to be, number 1, willing to listen deeply, 2, be willing to come to the table not knowing, and 3, make decisions out of love and not fear. And we are all on this journey of self-love. And that's really what the physical body is. Ernest Holmes says that the body is the manifestation of the unseen man. Just like the world, the planet, is a manifestation of an unseen God. And so all of this whole coronavirus pandemic, the appearance of this pandemic, there is something in this whole entire experience for us to learn as a people, as a humanity, about ourselves, which is what we can do with this time, and about the planet. And fear, to me, in this situation where it comes in with how we can be more self-empowered, is I think fear shows up in our communities when you're starting to get those early symptoms where you're not sure if it's COVID-19 or your asthma or an allergy. If there's any doubt, go get tested. There is no stigma. This virus does not discriminate. It can affect anyone. Myths that there are communities that it does not affect is just that, just a myth. So if you're having fever, muscle aches, new onset of cough that's not related to your allergies, new cough. Scratchy throat can sometimes be a symptom along with those other symptoms. People are reporting symptoms of the inability to smell. That can be a symptom. The myth that if you can hold your breath 10 seconds, you don't have the virus is just a myth. And it's dangerous to try to play that game. But if there's any question if you could have been in contact with someone or you think you might be coming down with symptoms of COVID-19, to not let that fear paralyze you. Reach out to your doctors, even though right now with CDC guidelines and state guidelines, many offices are not doing visits that are not seem to be urgent or emergent. Physicians are taking calls, they're doing virtual visits. There are hubs around the cities and emergency rooms where if you're having symptoms, you can be seen and evaluated and the testing done.
So you brought up, I mean, so much, you covered so much. We have a lot that's going on. And this past week, and we're hearing it all over the news media, the disparity for those that I'm going to say underserved. And primarily what we're talking about is the Black and the Latino community. Many have that, many believe that they can't get it. And then there are many that may be afraid to even step out and even get tested.
Yeah.
Many are confronted with a lot of things, the economic difference, the disparity, all of those different things there. What would you advise people that are confronted with these issues? I mean, we need to get tested. We need to be able to go to the doctor. Many people, and depending on the state we're in, may not have the insurance. How would you advise them to approach this?
Well, I know at our hospital systems, and I trained as a medical student in Chicago and residency in Boston and have been in Boston for many years, that we don't turn patients away if they're sick and need care. And I think that's really should be the first priority. You bring up a point about institutional disparities and economic disparities. And there are many people who do have insurance. And I think what is really the thing we should be zooming in on is that in Black and Latino communities, we have so many reasons that we can point to and look to that we know are very real and external to our circumstances, such as years of institutionalized disparities in racism, financial disparities. So typically African Americans and Latinos, we are living more in the poverty line than our counterparts. And health disparities that have been ingrained in the consciousness of our people and in the history of our people, such as hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and asthma, and poorly controlled hypertension, diabetes, and asthma in these communities. And many of these disparities also exist because of poverty and living conditions. So African American and Latino communities often exist. They're more populated. So you may have larger families living in a smaller space, or communities concentrated to one area where there's not as much space to social distance. And so you're going to have an increased risk for spread there. So we see the CDC publish reports on the social determinants of health and healthcare disparities and health disparities. And this is reported and researched and discussed over and over and over again. I feel, and this is what I'm doing in my health vows groups and with the women that I serve, and we have a rainbow of women that show up to these groups because I am in a community health center, is that it's really the individual behaviors where we can target in as a community. And that message is not always popular, but it's authentic and it's real. And that's where my heart is. Individual behaviors is where we really need to hone in. And it's something that we may not change the statistics in 1 year, 5 years. But if we're looking as a community of people long-term, we have to look at what we can do from the inside out to change these statistics, and actually starting at a very young age. I think we need to start with our youth, our teenagers. Every woman my age is either raising a daughter or knows of someone's daughter or has a niece or a girlfriend's daughter. And the same thing with men. And so we need to start with our youth on the individual factors, the individual behaviors that contribute to health disparities. And that's actually listed as one of the social determinants of health, but we spend very little time on it because that's where the difficult work lies, in changing people's consciousness. That's what I love about science of mind philosophy, is that we can read scripture, we can learn from all these religions, but this philosophy helps us use what we've learned in religion and science, and we can combine them to empower ourselves through thought and intention to change our lives. So with individual factors, it's about when you're diagnosed with high blood pressure, that maybe you're fearful of the healthcare system, but if you're a praying person, maybe your prayer becomes, to seek and to find clarity in the right physician that's going to deliver you authentic patient-based care, who sees you and meets you where you are. But then you search and you find that, just as you would a friend or a spouse or a life partner. And so you find the physician that speaks your language, but you don't stop with just having hypertension, because you're going to have hypertension, and it's one of those diseases that you feel good until you don't. And hypertension, cardiovascular disease is the number one killer. And many people think that it's something different, but it's actually, cardiovascular disease is very serious. Diabetes. Many people in the African American and Latino communities, you have diabetes, you necessarily don't feel you have it for a number of years until the complications start. So if you're told you have diabetes and you're struggling with lifestyle modifications, diet and exercise, then maybe it's time to take that metformin, or maybe you've been advised to take insulin. But individual behaviors of taking these scenarios seriously and not becoming the diagnosis, but saying, what is this diagnosis telling me about my life, my lifestyle? What do I need to change? And for some people, that's very difficult to do when they're worried about how they're going to pay their rent, or if they're working several jobs. But if there is a will, there is a way. And so if we start empowering people at a young age, getting teenagers, having them get the message that they're worthy to live a healthy life, and getting the message that you are the main star in your life. So we are in a celebrity culture, but you are the celebrity in your life. You're the main character, the main act. And if you're not whole and healthy, if you're not taking care of this body, which is spiritual, just as everything you feel in the unseen, just as you pray to God, your body is spiritual and it needs to be cared for. And so knowing that that is important, that you're worthy, and that you can find caregivers that care about you, I think that's where the work lies as a community. And then we would be armored up. We'd be prepared when a pandemic arises. Our communities will not already be heavily impacted by all of these other comorbidities called diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, hypertension.
This is part of our empowerment.
Yes.
What I'm hearing. And what I hear also is being praying people. And we all are praying people. But the most important part about prayer, and I love when Ernest Holmes says, treat and move your feet.
Yes.
What he was saying is pray and move your feet, for those that are not familiar with the science of mind philosophy. So we pray and we move our feet. Our actions are prayers, and those actions can make a difference. The part that I love too about the action of prayer, because sometimes people pray and they sit and they wait. They're externalizing a spiritual practice when it should be something that is internalized. Absolutely. And part of that internalization is listening deeply, low listening. And if any of us have had, I'm going to call them prayerful warriors in your lives, like our old grandmothers. I remember my grandmother. All I know is about grandmother is her whole life was dedicated to teaching me about the power of prayer and cultivating a relationship with God. Now, I didn't necessarily agree with grandmother's approach. But as I grew, I had a deep appreciation, and the part that she instilled in me, it stays with me today. And part of that has helped me with the practical side of life. When I was a little girl, I really didn't get that.
Yeah.
But the practical side of life, listening and allowing yourself to be empowered. And we get to remember that when we are in the presence of people that are experts in that area, when we trust and we know they have our highest and best interests at heart, then what we can do is we can listen for the answer. So, what
Mhm.
I'm hearing from you is to empower yourself, to be prayerful in all things, and to be prayerful with those that are charged with your care. And if we are prayerful with those that are charged with our care, what we're going to do is find that we are in alignment. There are some people that have skills. I was having a conversation with a colleague, and she was sharing about some conditions in their lives because heart disease, diabetes, these are all conditions. And what I know about conditions is we can address them in a way, in a healthy way. And what we can do is rise above these conditions. I want you to hear I said rise above. Doesn't mean that you can walk away and say, I'm healed. Everybody has a different experience. But I want you to know that you can empower yourself. But the empowerment is the way you change your behavior, is
Mhm.
part of changing your thinking. And so, as you change your behavior and change your thinking, then what you can do is move into a place of empowerment. So, it's quite interesting, Dr. Liza. I was traveling, and you and I were together about a month ago in Denver at a convention, and we had a wonderful time. Once I got back from that convention, I had a doctor's appointment. And so I told myself, sometimes I like to have conversations with myself. So I said, Self, I need to get a hold of everything that is going on around me now because it's crazy and it is chaotic. I need to make sure that I empower myself. And so part of empowering myself was to make a list of some questions that I had for my doctor. And after I made that list, and I went to my doctor. I interviewed my doctor to find out what I needed to do to be first a safe place in a world. That's part of the mandate for us, for humanity, is learning how to be a safe place. So that safe place had to do with understanding what was going on around me with the coronavirus, finding out about my conditions and how it would impact me, and also following her guidance so that I could be a safe place. And the most important part of that whole process was to ask very important questions. So she supported me in terms of understanding my condition. Not only did she support me in understanding that, her counsel with me was to follow the protocol in terms of medication that had been prescribed. Also, she also advised me to support myself with supplements as well as exercise.
Yeah.
And she said that if I followed that protocol, it would improve my chances in moving past this situation. So I think that the word for especially those that are in our Latinos and our African Americans, Blacks in the communities, is to remember that we can change right now by making better choices for ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think that's overwhelming for some people. And what I tell my patients sometimes too is don't get overwhelmed. This is a relationship. I'm here to support you. And
Mhm.
for instance, exercise. if you're someone who just hasn't exercised, and maybe it wasn't a priority or wasn't something you were introduced to at a young age, that doesn't mean you can't change. And you can start off with something that's manageable and doable, that it wasn't going to affect your self-esteem. You know, you could put a walking shoe on and get your favorite music and podcast and start walking twice a week. And then in the next week, you increase it to 3 times a week. So I think the doctor sounds like a wonderful physician where you actually could have a conversation, and it's really a team. You know, you can learn about what the diagnosis or the appearance of discord in the body is and what is recommended that you do, and then you make decisions. But to do nothing and to just ignore it and to go on with life, and then the problem doesn't just go away, and then you end up with a situation where things are out of control, out of your control. And because the body is speaking to you, and so it's like, are you listening? Are you taking the body's intuitive guidance? The body speaks to us. It speaks to us. It has a voice. Sometimes it produces a symptom. It could be pain. It could be discomfort with something that you're eating. And so to honor the spiritual body is a spiritual practice that is, I find, one of the easiest things sometimes for people to ignore because it's foreign to them, which brings me back to starting off with our young people. I think after this COVID-19 pandemic, I dream of the spiritual utopia. You've heard me talk about that in a workshop that I gave on bridging spirituality and medicine. I think the real work would lie in when we start having health town halls where we say, look, these are the disparities. This is what we've got going on as a community. These are the diseases affecting our communities in numbers and debilitating us. And we have these poor health outcomes. So we start implementing programs for our youth. We start empowering communities, giving them tools on how to speak this medical language.
Yes.
I think it can be intimidating for people. When I go to take my car in to get it fixed, there's a whole different language that's being used. But the car comes with a manual and in a huge instruction book this thick, you know, and we just arrive here with this beautiful spirit and this beautiful body temple that harbors the spirit in this realm, and we're to care for it. And there isn't an owner's manual that's written. So I think that's the real work that lies, is that maybe this pandemic is happening, and once again, it's highlighted that our communities of color, African Americans, Latinos, are hardest hit because we already have so many coexisting circumstances, and many of them may be outside people's immediate ability to change. We've talked about that, but you can change your consciousness in an instant and individual behaviors and just simply begin to take the steps. And I think that's where our real work lies. So I hope that people can hear our Surgeon General's message and not get too upset, but to kind of really reflect with all this time we have to be still on what we can do as a community, because this is not the first dis-ease, this virus, to show up and hard hit the Black and Latino community. There have been many others.
You know, what comes up for me strongly, and over the past few days, just sitting and listening to this, and when we talk about empowerment, one small step can make a difference. And over the course of the years, just learning about being a safe place and empowering yourself. I know for myself and for my loved ones, it is important that we show up in a healthy way. The past couple of years, our family has moved through quite a few things. Our world was shaken when someone very close to us was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that whole experience had an impact on us. My mother had breast cancer, and she ultimately died of cancer. But for that to impact a new generation was awakening each time you go through an experience. But I noticed that in our family, many of us have chosen to make better choices in our lives. And moving through this, I know that we will be making better choices as a collective humanity. One of the things that I'd like to focus on is in terms of our eating habits and the choices that we make. I remember it was just a treat every blue moon to go to McDonald's when I was a little girl because our parents could not afford to go to McDonald's. And this is not anything against McDonald's or even all the wonderful places that we have at our disposal. But what I did learn was the value of being in nature, and being in nature included growing our vegetables and harvesting those vegetables. And one thing I know is we can go and purchase seeds for little or nothing.
Yes.
And if we learn, we have technology at our disposal. If we have technology at our disposal, we can learn how to germinate those seeds and use those seeds, whether we're in an apartment setting and we need pots to plant those seeds to grow them, or whether we have a plot of land. And that can make a difference. One of the major changes that I made in my life was a commitment to make sure that I enriched myself, and I learned a wonderful recipe. If you go to my Facebook page, personal Facebook page, you'll see that recipe of how I can take kale and create a wonderful meal and also empower myself in a healthy way. So if we make one little small change, we can make a difference for ourselves, our family, and the world.
Yes.
Um, so we will get past this. This is what I know. We're going to get past this,
Yes.
and it will impact a large number of the people in our community. And my heart is going out to those that are leaving this planet right now. And one of the things that I know is that those of us that are moving past this, that are carrying on, there is a special mandate for us, and it is to empower ourselves. Doesn't matter whether we're Black, Latino, or whether we are of another race, we're all in this together. And my prayer is that we all empower ourselves, we all love and support each other in understanding ourselves and understanding our value as a part of this global thing we call humanity. So I just am so grateful for us to have this conversation. I have one more question for you. And then after that question, I just want you to share with us about how spiritual practice impacts and supports you in the work you're doing. So that final question I have is, I had a person that says that they're really confused about this thing about ibuprofens.
Okay.
And that's, so can you please clarify that for us?
So there is a rumor going around that people who have responded poorly, had very poor outcomes to COVID-19, passed on or had more severe upper respiratory symptoms and respiratory distress, were on ibuprofens or taking ibuprofen or given ibuprofen at some point. And right now, like I said, this is a new virus. So there's a lot of research and a lot of new data coming out. But right now, currently, there is no scientific data to really support this claim. Right now, we feel it's a myth. It's one of the myths listed on the World Health Organization website under Mythbusters about COVID-19. So there's just no answer for that yet. There's no real data to support that. And it's currently a rumor, just like many of the other rumors that we've heard about COVID-19. So I would say stay tuned, but there's just not enough research right now. I think scientists and doctors all over the world are just been in constant placing a constant intention on managing the symptoms and trying to figure out how to decrease the severity and of the virus when it does hit, and just trying to understand more about the virus. And they're developing potentially new treatment therapies with plasma. And so right now, that's just, it's a myth as we know it today. Can that change? Yes, I would say stay tuned. But the recommendations from the CDC right now is that if you are requiring NSAIDs for a chronic autoimmune disease that's affecting the joints, or for pain syndromes that you have that are affecting your quality of life, they're suggesting that you should use your NSAIDs, ibuprofen, Advil, naproxen, things like Celebrex. Use it as prescribed. Don't take more than your typical dose, and to treat what you've needed to treat in the past. But because there's really no correlation right now as far as they know. Now, some people feel there's truth to every rumor, so they may decide to not take ibuprofens at this time. And if it's making you nervous because you've heard this information, I would say, is there an alternative medication such as Tylenol that can help you with your pain if you're someone that has suffered a chronic injury, or maybe you're just needing it for something mild? So that's, just maybe figure out what your other options are if you're not comfortable taking ibuprofen at this time. But knowing the research is not supportive of that currently.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. Wonderful.
You're welcome.
Well, I know that you're one of our first responders, and I want to say thank you. We do appreciate you. Mm-hmm. And I always say this is for our doctors, our nurses, those that are on the front line. This is your finest hour. You are our heroes and our sheroes right now. On behalf of all of humanity, I want to thank you for the wonderful service that you are rendering to us all. And my question to you is, what is or how are you using spiritual practice to get you through this time?
So I have a deep spiritual practice in general every day, and I think I have a deep humility about the life of service and this call that I've taken as a medical doctor. Just dealing with the human spirit and the human body, because not only do I treat women on an outpatient basis, having conversations and diagnosing, I do office procedures, and then I'm a surgeon. So I see the miraculous divinity in the human spirit and the human body. So I have a deep spiritual practice anyhow, particularly on my surgery days. I wake up very early and pray and meditate. I meditate every morning for at least 30 minutes, and I wake up first. I have a practice of my spiritual readings every morning. There are certain books that I go to. I journal sometimes, but it's always a reading and meditation, and then prayer, followed by prayer. I will pray throughout the day, often in my head. If there's a situation that comes up, maybe I'm in the middle of a difficult dissection during surgery, and I'll pray internally. I often pray when my patients are going to sleep. I pray over them, and no one in the room knows that, because doctors are not taught to show up and proclaim our religious beliefs. It's something that's actually often, it's just something that we don't talk about, because we are trying to meet patients where they are. And given that patients come from many different religious backgrounds, it's almost like thought of to be intrusive if you do that. So my spiritual practice with my patients is very internal. And there are patients that can sniff that out and call that out, what they see in you, your energy. But that is why I think physicians maybe are not seen as coexisting with spirituality, but it's very much part of my practice. I read Psalm 91, particularly in this time, and Psalm 23. Psalm 91 I read twice a day, and it's very dear to my heart. And whenever my spiritual practice also involves praying for the world. I could not do my health vows groups in person. I had weekly workshops going on, so I switched it, and I do a Zoom meeting from 7 to 8 p.m. with the Health Vows group. We opened it up to the larger community, so anyone can join from 7 to 8 p.m. And I start off with an inspirational reading, a guided meditation, and then we talk about mindfulness, fear, peace, and different topics. On Saturday mornings from 8:30 to 9:15, as a spiritual practitioner, I host an inspiration meditation prayer time. It's 45 minutes. I start off with a spiritual reading. I move into a guided meditation for the group, and the last 15 to 20 minutes is a sharing, and we end in affirmative prayer. And many individuals who Zoom in on that call may not study the science of mind or be are religious scientists. It's just open to anyone who feels that they want to pray. And we pray for the world. I use a lot of energy. We send energy of love and peace out into the world, knowing that it comes from within and from God. Those are the biggest ways I think that I practice the presence. And the other thing I want to mention too, which is very important, is, and I have a call out of prayer for all of the spiritual intuitives and ministers, is to pray for us, all the frontline workers, and for scientists and doctors and healthcare workers and nurses on the front line and researchers, these large research groups. Pray for us as you give gratitude, which is such a beautiful spiritual practice. Send a prayer. And the reason I say this is because Ernest Holmes, in his chapter on the body, talks about unity, oneness, the interconnectedness of all things, and multiplicity. And in one beautiful paragraph, Ernest Holmes mentions the gardener, the geologist, the evolutionist, the scientist, and the spiritual intuitive, all in one paragraph, talking about the interconnectedness. And so we need to bridge this thing called spirituality and medicine, religion and science, because it's already one. It's already interconnected and one in the mind of God. So my prayer would be, when you are doing affirmative prayer or any sort of prayer, that divine guidance, clarity, grace, and wisdom is downloaded from God into the minds of each one to figure out what is ours to do as in humanity during this time, and is downloaded by the scientific genius, the medical doctor, on how to manage this COVID-19 and what is the message for the world. Let us pray that clarity is brought to us as a humanity on what is trying to be revealed, what is emerging from this entire situation, what is ours to do as a humanity. I mean, maybe the world needs a break. Maybe our planet, maybe we need curfews for a month or two, moving forward. We're going to see the planet recovering in this time as people are staying home and not in their cars and putting trash and out, living. We're living at home. This is bringing us all back to basics: food, shelter, clothing, the internal spirit, love, family, time with yourself. And so let's bring it back to basics, that God is in all things. So this is my prayer. I'll stop now. I can go on forever.
Yes, I understand. So, and I am hearing, I know that I'm here in California, our freeways are clear, and the quality of our environment has shifted tremendously. We have a beautiful day. The skies are blue and clear. The clouds are falling to the wayside, but people can see our mountain. I have a wonderful mountain. I'm close by Mount Baldy. I call it my mountain. And
of course,
I know that Mother Earth is smiling and grateful as she moves through her healing process. I just so happy that you really put it out there. I am meeting on a Tuesday. I have a practitioner that I sit with, and since this has started, we were working on another project, and we immediately shifted, and our focus is on our doctors, our first responders, our researchers, and our scientists right now. And I always remember the story about polio. This story was shared many, many years ago. I remember coming to church after hearing about Magic Johnson being diagnosed as HIV positive. It was something on everybody's mind at the time. And my minister, Dr. Carlo Giovanni, he's passed on now. He started out sharing about his personal experience growing up and how parents were afraid to allow their children to go outside because they just thought that they would catch polio that way. But people from all faiths, all traditions came together and they prayed and they prayed. The result was they came up with a vaccine
Yep.
and it made a difference in the world. And so, here in our hemisphere, I'm going to say in our hemisphere, we don't know anything about polio. That is a thing of the past. That is not something that we experience now. But there was a point in a time where people were confronted with that.
Yes.
So we get to remember that this too shall pass,
Yes.
and we all get a chance to contribute to that. So we may not have the expertise that you have, but what we can do is be the wind beneath your wings.
Well, it's all about word, the power in the word, intention and thought. And we all have that internal power, whether
Yeah,
consciously or subconsciously, you know. So I think expertise is just how we've shown up to serve. We all have our place and what we came here called to do, but that doesn't make any person less important than another person. And that's really the beauty in this pandemic, is it is really revealing to those of us who may not be living consciously that we all are one, interconnected and important. This really shows just that, in my opinion. And the
absolutely.
planet is important. We need to start
Absolutely.
treating it just like we would a living being right next to us.
Mhm.
The planet is speaking to us now.
Absolutely. So I thank you so much. This has been very fruitful. I know that many people will benefit from this. Is it possible for you to close us out by reading the 91st Psalm and
Yes.
just the prayer? Thank you.
So the psalm and prayer.
Mhm.
Okay. So 91st Psalm. And get comfortable. Let's
Mhm.
breathe. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, "The Lord is my refuge," and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life, I shall satisfy him and show him my salvation. Amen.
Mhm.
So, on that note, and coming to this place, recognizing the presence of love and peace and infinite wisdom and light, clarity and grace all around me. I speak my word and the power in it, of it, and through it. I speak my word knowing that God is all there is. This God, this Spirit, this infinite one, this infinite wisdom is all light and all truth. I speak my word knowing that it is God's grace and light that touches my spirit through the still small voice with infinite wisdom and divine right action and clarity, showing the way, revealing all paths made straight. It is in and through God that the insights are revealed of what is to emerge from this time with this appearance of a pandemic called COVID-19. What is to be revealed in me and through humanity, through every scientist and doctor and medical worker. I speak my word knowing that it's God's word that flows through the infinite wisdom, the still small voice, divine right action into this space, that clarity emerges. Knowing that God is all light, all truth, all love. Knowing that God is the creative architect of the universe, the seen and unseen, that this power, this wisdom, this loving presence is on time. And knowing I'm one with this power and presence, I'm one with this beautiful power. I'm one with all life, one truth, all wisdom. I'm one with the infinite wisdom as it lives, moves, and breathes in me through the still small voice, through insight. As my mind is one with the mind of God, my heart is one with the heart of God, and my body is one with the body of God. And this is true for all sentient beings. And this is true for the world and the planet. And knowing this truth, I know that the infinite wisdom of the divine light, I know that the infinite wisdom of God is working in and through me, transmuting, downloading through the still small voice, through insights, with clarity, with guidance on what is mine to do, what are the next steps, what is to emerge in this thing called life. And as this is true for me, this is true for each one in this world, in the cosmos, that the infinite one directs and guides each scientist, each medical doctor, each research team, that it is God's grace and wisdom that speaks through the planet with clarity for humanity. And I'm grateful for knowing that this time is just an appearance of discord, that in times of choppy water is where insights are gained, where strength and power are revealed. And all evolves with ease, grace, peace, and love. I'm grateful for knowing that God makes all paths straight and shines the light on all darkness. And I release this word into the law, knowing it is done, that the insights in the here and now are downloaded and coded in and through me, in and through each one, in and through each scientist, in and through each doctor, in and through each medical worker, and in and through this pandemic, this season of growth, change, evolution, and clarity and wisdom. And it is done, it is so. I release my word into the loving law of God in peace. And together we say, and so it is.
And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Jerry, for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just want the viewers to know that Dr. Liza, I keep wanting to say Reverend, I had to be mindful of that. has provided us with resources, and we are going to make those resources available to you. Remember to continue to check in with the CDC to get the most valued information around this. And maybe perhaps we'll have Dr. Liza back again.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
It's been
so much.
wonderful.
Yes.